Excuse me, sir. Please rename yourself. It's already mentioned over there, Miss Lovepreet Kaur. Sir, shall we start session?
Yeah, we can start.
Oh, okay, sir.
I hope you received the presentation.
Yes, sir. It is. It is.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sir. Good morning, everyone. I welcome you all in the fourth day of Krishi Manthan workshop organized in the collaboration with Just Agriculture magazine. Today we have with us the eminent speaker, Mr. Minju Srinivasulu, who is founder director, social advancement, Ventures Foundations, Save Foundations, and he is also a former vice president of eFresh Agribusiness Solution Private Limited. Mr. Vindu has over 25 years of experience with the farmers in agribusiness development services and also rural transformation. He has a great field experience also in Zambia, Africa, and Mr. Vendu has also visited many of the countries like Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda, Ethiopia, Thailand, South Korea as a counseling and training assignments. During 2007, Mr. Vendu served as on committee for the National Consultation Technology and Development of Delivery Model of Sustainable Livelihood. And during 2018, he has also worked for some others, like in the he's worked as a panelist for the conferences also. And Mr. Vinju currently servicing as an expert member in working group on Alliance for the Sustainable Agriculture. Today, he is going to deliver on the topic of advances in agripreneurship and skill development for reshaping future of Indian agriculture. Sir, now session is up to you. You can start your topic.
Yeah, thank you for the good introduction. Thank you, Sushma Sharma. And I look forward to have the presentation to kept on so that we will use the presentation.
Okay, sir. Sir, sharing PPT, sir.
Yeah, please.
Okay, sir. Okay. Is this visible?
Yeah, for me it is visible. I hope for everybody else it's visible.
Yes, sir. Please.
So, good morning to everyone. I think this needs to be adjusted to the screen size.
Yes, sir. Are you facing any problem?
Yeah, I am not able to see the full fitted screen size. Something is missing in the top or bottom like this. It has to be screen fitted.
Oh, okay, sir. I'll short it out.
Yeah, please. So meanwhile, students, everybody, good morning, very good morning. So it's my pleasure to associate with all of you. Uh, Today we will be discussing about various opportunities and then what's happening in the industry which are going to contribute for the reshaping the future of Indian agriculture. So a lot of innovations and all. Yes, Shushma, is it okay for you from your side? I think it's still. I do one. Otherwise, we can do one thing. Um, Let me share my screen, then I will manage myself.
Yes, sir. You can share because we have only this PDF form. We
Yeah, let me allow me to share
don't have
my.
any PPT.
Uh,
You can share, sir. I'll stop sharing from this side. You share from your side.
Correct. Okay. So is it visible?
Yeah, sir. Yes, sir. It is visible.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Welcome back, everybody. So we are going to talk about advances in agripreneurship and skill development for reshaping future of Indian agriculture as part of the Krishi Manthan. So, guys, all I'm sure that you will be aware of these general numbers of Indian agriculture scenario, but I will re-emphasize on some of the statistics which makes some importance. So we all know that how big our country is, and then how big we have the agriculture land, 155 million hectares land, total cultivated, largest, second largest in the in the world, and we have 3.5 million hectares of the area under wild harvest area, which can be treated as a direct organic production area. So it's a wild harvest. There is no chemical input or something like that, no man effort. And 5.7 million hectare land is in the organic area, and also it's growing very fast in Indian context in the recent past. So another very interesting point is that India has 46 types of the soils which are classified out of 60 soil types in the world. So you can imagine that how much advantage India is having in terms of agriculture diversity. So if you look at that, the agroclimatic conditions also, that we have 15 different agroclimatic conditions what the world is having outside the India, we have within the India. So if you look at that again, 55 million hectare land is under irrigation, which is largest in the world. Of course, if you look at the Indian context, it is still less than 50%, and then in the overall area. So we a lot has only 30%. You can say that. So it has to go a long way. But all these factors are giving a lot of strength to Indian agriculture. But we will also talk about what are the challenges and other things. Then when we look at the economic value, it's all about 23 trillion Indian rupees gross value added from agri, forestry, and fishing every year. So the positive thing is that in the recent past, we are seeing 3.4% growth rate in agriculture and allied activities. 276 billion US dollars market value of agriculture products is there in India. And when it comes to the farm mechanization, I just talked about this. It's not largely it is about tractors, of course, in India, because we still need to go beyond tractors to customized farm implements, which is growing now. Huge potential is there, and we have 8.6 lakh tractors produced in India in during 2020. Out of 77,300 plus have been exported to outside. So this is also growing. And coming to the crops diversity, of course, we still continue rice production and wheat production, which are very largely diversified from south and north Indian terrains. And most importantly and interesting thing is that the rise of horticulture crops cultivation across the country in the recent past. So you can see that now the horticulture crops have come to the third position with 25 million hectares land under horticulture crops, and it's also rapidly growing. So these are very interesting insights that what we need to see that. Of course, 44 million hectares of the rice and 29 million hectares of the wheat. We also need to see that how much carbon footprint they are actually putting in this climate change context, how we can go towards the smart agriculture to reduce the carbon footprint. So continuing the Indian agriculture position, some of the commodities where we largely influencing the world, milk 208 million metric tons production, pulses 23, meat 7.7, banana 31.7, mango 20.8, rice 117.97, wheat 102.2 million metric tons. So these are the some of the crops which we are actually positioned well across the globe for our productivity, production, not productivity, production. So Indian agribusiness potential, as I mentioned that we have unique agroclimatic, diversity. Our diversity in terms of the climate and crops is unique, so that India is really blessed if we can use this as united as an India by leveraging from each other region, and then so we need to address several inefficiencies on the ground about productivity, quality of the production, and all those things, and especially the post-harvest storage issues. I will come to those issues in the next slides. But if you look at the existing business, you see that somewhere about seed industry is 28,700 crores, which is growing at 13.6% CGR. And pesticide industry is 23,200 plus crores. Fertilizer industry is massive, 5 lakh 43,700 crores. Farm machinery is still growing, 95,400 crores. So you can see the numbers here. So I have given a clear picture that how important Indian agriculture is providing to the economy within the country in terms of these things. So post-harvest treatment industry, food processing industry is massive. That this is 30 lakh crores. You can see that, and it's growing very fast, 12% CGR. And agriculture startups. This is recently given by Ernst Young report where they mentioned that Indian agriculture agri-tech startups have a potential to do 24 billion US dollars business by 2025. So we already lost almost 1.5 years ever since this report has been published. At the time, India has only unleashed somewhere about 1% of the potential by its new startups. So it's growing actually. We are learning from our all experiences and all. So now you look at that number of existing agri input dealers. This is how the traditional farming in India is happening, where the farmers largely gets agricultural advisory services, typically very limited, but which is influencing them to take the inputs like buying the seeds, pesticides, fertilizers, and then so on. So this is about 2.82 lakh agri input dealers are spread across the country out of the 6.5 lakh villages what India is having. So number of trained agri input dealers, this is about 50,000, which is done by the Managed Institute in Hyderabad and their associate network across the country under the DESI program, where local agriculture departments and Krishi Vignana Kendras are actually training the traditional agri input dealers who do not have the technical education qualification to provide these agricultural input service to farmers. So they are about 50,000. And now you come to the next stage of the country, what India is now going through by promoting farmer producer organizations. So we already have 7,300 plus farmer producer organizations by 2020 March ending. Actually, this is, and last year government of India also mentioned that uh, we are going to promote 10,000 new farmer producer organizations by 2024 across the country. In fact, the FPO's formation across the country is a strategic policy decision by government of India, which is necessary. The reason is that we have had ambitious policies taken up in the first phase of the government when BJP government has come into the government in the earlier. So they mentioned that the doubling the farmers' income and then the doubling the agriculture exports is the top priority. But they are not that easy. You don't have any benchmark across the country because so diversified, and then people small to marginal farmers, and every state has its own problems and all. So there is no benchmark from where to where you actually can take it. Although the Niti Aayog has taken somewhere about 86,000 something as an on average existing income, but in the true sense, it really varies a lot. So the real challenge is that individually helping the farmers to achieve doubling their income is impossible in the Indian context. So the realization has come that when you can be able to bring the farmers collectively and then help them to to organize collectively to buy the inputs collectively and then to do the agriculture with selective focused crops. So these kind of things will really help the farmers and as well as the government to meet its objectives of doubling the income over a period of time. So this has a very significance in that. So now let us look at the big problem across the globe, not only in India, across the globe. It's just you look at the map that this is about hunger and poverty. So we know that across the globe we have 7+ billion population is there, where India is having 1.3+ billion population, and now the more than 700 million people every day are going without food, proper food to bed across the globe, and it is projected that now it is going to increase to 840 million by 2030, and we don't even know how it goes further because COVID has arrived 2 years back, and then since 1 year it is disrupting everybody across the globe like anything. And now the COVID has brought two things. One is uncertainty. Uncertainty, you don't know because how things will go, when it will, you will hear that okay it's going to be lockdown, and then what kind of variant is coming and how deadly it is going to happen, and then who is going to affect, you don't know. A lot of uncertainty is always there. And another side, COVID also has sensitized us how important it is for us to be disciplined and to be more focused on qualitative aspects. We cannot waste our life, or we cannot waste our resources, we cannot waste our time, or so and so. It has really sensitized everybody at some cost, very high price. So let us understand that hunger and poverty are going to be a key challenges for every government and every industry, everyone. Even if you want to work for some company, or even if you want to start something on your own, these are the areas which your solutions to help the society to evolve without having any hunger, any poverty. So for in this direction, we are seeing that there's a lot of increase in the agri-tech startups because we focus on agriculture. So in 2019 across the globe, around 1600+ startups have come up. So they are very, very innovative, ranging from technology, drones, and then nanotechnology, organic inputs, post-harvest storage solutions, smart irrigation, farm mechanization related, value proposition to food processing. There are n number of things are coming up. So these are actually going to have a lot of challenges because not easy that every idea can come to a feasible, scalable, product. So what is important, as already we spoke about this Ernst & Young report, $24 billion market potential for India by 2025. We need to capture that because the report also said that we have done only 1% of 24 billion. So 99% we are yet to achieve that. In fact, today I have seen one report that where 108 billion funding has been raised by 31 Indian agri-tech startups. So this is the latest statistics. So it's increasing. Earlier we only did it 1%. So now you see that how things are going actually. So big thing is going in this. So what makes the difference is that the quality human resources and entrepreneurship approach mindset. Everybody should have entrepreneurship mindset. So this is very tricky when we are in the young age, and then when we are in the college campuses pursuing our undergraduation or post graduation. It is the most challenging thing, that having an entrepreneurial mindset in this kind of diversity distractions, so it's very important. Either it is for your own employment or you are going to work for the industry. So the agri-tech sector are ripe for disruption, as we already mentioned that. So huge money is actually coming in that. The projections are saying that there could be more investments in the years to come in. So when we look at the existing structure of the agriculture input distribution, we all know that the traditional agri input stores, the local agriculture dealers, who are spread across the country, as we seen the number 2.28 lakh something. So the issues are there. They are very strongly connected with the farmers locally for decades. But at the same time, they have some challenges like limited products and services available for farmer needs, and they don't have digitization and technology integration. And they also have a serious issue of the fake inputs and spurious input sales, because sometimes they don't know from where the source is coming, who is selling what, and all those things. Because if you look at the official report of the Indian Institute of Public Administration in association with the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, recently published that 58% of the agri inputs available in the markets are actually fake or input or spurious or counterfeit. So this is a serious issue because it's a big country, and 14 crore farmer families are depending on small and marginal, farmers composing in that, and spread across that, who are actually backbone to the Indian food security. So they are getting 58% of fake is a serious issue. We need to be very seriously looked at that, and we have to work very honestly, integratedly to address those issues. So low awareness and good agriculture practices to farmers is another issue, because they will not be in a position to provide the good agriculture practices. They only will tell that, okay, this will work for this nutrient deficiency, or this work for this pesticide, this pest, or this work for this disease, or something like that. But the holistic approach, which is very important for the consumer perspective, is very, very missing. So that is one thing can be addressed only by having the approach of the good agriculture practices as a standard, protocol. So not all dealers are well qualified and equipped with required technical know-how. This is another problem. That is the reason why manage and then agriculture department in Krishi Vignan Kendras have come forward and and training the farmers under the DESI program. But it's more important that more professionals, more technical people to come into this space, and then provide professional services is important. So when we look at that, we have new generation agri input stores. Okay, what we spoke now are the challenges and then the existing scenario. So what is happening now? Is India going to be the same? No. India is changing very rapidly, and a lot of innovations are coming in. I mentioned only a couple of examples, and there could be many more good examples also. So here, if you look at the DHAT, for example, which is working very aggressively in the northern India, and eFresh is now spreading from the south to other states, and Managromer is a Coromandel International Fertilizer. So what all this speaks about? They provide professional services to farmers and ensures only quality inputs available, and full range of services for farmers needs across the value chain. So it's about a value chain approach. It's not about, okay, a farmer is walking to shop and then asking that I have a problem and then I sell what I want or what I have. It is not like that. It is about looking at the commodity is grown in a particular area and what is that commodity value chain requires from sowing to harvest. So all those kind of services need to be kept available for the farmers requirements, so that the farmers will not be at a disadvantage at any point of time. So digitization and data driven decisions to serve the farmers needs timely. This is very important, because timely provision of the services matters a lot for agriculture, because agriculture is largely still rain fed dependent in the country, because we have seen that out of 155 million hectares, only 55 million hectares are irrigated. So every the small window matters a lot of change. If you don't provide a particular input, say for example weedicide, if you are not able to do the weeding or weed management in the early stage of the crop, then it is going to have a lot of negative implications on the main crop. So this is very important. Same thing, everything is matters a lot: nutrient management, the crop protection management, irrigation management, everything. So this can be made, you need to have data because we do not have proper data availability. Of course, India is doing a lot of efforts in the recent years to build a nationwide data, which is, but still we have a lot of challenges to say about authenticity of the data and then the genuinity of the data. So because when you have a real transaction, that actually gives the real data. Otherwise, if you ask some farmer that what you are using, and then he may say anything, so that's not going to help. So the transaction based data is really going to help because there are economics involved in that. So that is what is important. That can be done from this method, this mode of doing transactions. And risk mitigation, financial services integration are very important because the farmers are at a disadvantage when it comes to the natural calamities or something else also. Say for example, I give a small example. In coastal area, the farmers are already having, in general, everybody is having Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana coverage. That is one thing. But there are so much innovations are coming in the insurance sector, weather index based insurance like WRMS is doing, or some other companies are doing in that. So what they found is that, say for example, if you have made a policy for the weather or rain index, okay, rainfall index based thing, but actually there is no issue with the rain. Okay, the rain, cyclone has come and the rain is fine within the limited prescribed of the thing, but the crop is damaged because of the wind. So if the wind is not covered in the policy, then the farmers are not going to get the benefit. So like that, everybody is learning. So innovations are very key. We need to be responsive to the actual situations going on time to time, because the challenges will come, new challenges also will emerge. That is what we need to learn. So insurance, innovative insurance products are required. Financial services like mainstream financial services like banks required to come, because they are the formal sector. They can give you at the very lowest price of interest rate when it compared with non-banking finance corporations or MFIs, who are actually doing a very good job on the ground by aggressively having their footprint on the ground, but their operating expenses are very high. So I feel it's time for the formal institution banks also to come forward, and the banks only can come forward when the repayment rate is good, and it should be encouraging the environment for them. Otherwise, they will be afraid of loan waivers and then losing their portfolio. So these are the challenges which we need to understand, and those kind of things can be addressed through this model because they select carefully the select customers. So the farm machinery, custom hiring centers, and service support. Now, these are actually emerging very well. Government also is providing support from horticulture department and other departments under the farm mechanization support. And then I think this is growing well. And traceability and output market linkages also provided from these kind of outlets because they have the data of the farmers and they connect with the buyers and then suppliers. Unique business proportion. For example, in FDCs of eFresh, then we actually provide as a franchises to farmers or farmer producer organizations so that they represent the local communities and then they make their own choices. So when you look at that as an young students, young professionals who are going to enter into the industry after a year or after 2 years or 3 years, whatever it may be, what are the opportunities you have in agripreneurship? So how you can actually help the country to build its agribusiness, industry, and then the overall ecosystem, which is largely inefficient and suffering from the negative, image and all. So these are the some of the most important areas. So one can connect yourself, your passion, and you can learn more, and you can become you can connect with the experts, you can learn more things, and then you can also pursue your career as an entrepreneur or otherwise working for a company as an employee. So seed sector is there, plant nutrients, plant protection, smart irrigation, farm mechanization, digital transactions. This is one huge area. You need to really know more about these things, how digital transactions are going to reshape the Indian agriculture, because the data is key. So it will tell clearly that after 1-2 years that what are the inputs farmers are using, what are the products consumers are preferring, and then where the wastage is going happening, and where the transaction costs are high, where you actually can reduce that, and human resources productivity, everything will be coming from the digital transaction and digitization of the document data. And risk mitigation services, insurance, I just spoke about it, financial services, post-harvest storage solutions. This is one of the most important aspects that India is suffering. In the earlier data shows that it's about almost 100,000 crores, 1 lakh crores we are losing every year in post-harvest losses at farm gate level. So this is huge. This is almost equivalent to the Atmanirbhar infrastructure scheme fund what government has given. So this is where we really need to save money, save wastage. We should not have any wastage. We need to be more efficient, effective, productive. So so there is huge things, as we already seen that the rise of horticulture crops also on rise. So we can provide more and more solutions under this. And farm logistics is another important area because India is huge country. Even within India, you want to transact from Kashmir to Kanyakumari or Tamil Nadu to Assam or somewhere else. If you look at that, Rajasthan to Telangana, you need to see that logistics has to be very key. Otherwise, the perishability issues will come, and then the other nutritional preservation things will come, and the freshness, and then the consumer acceptance, and all those will be a big challenges. So now the government also has taken good initiatives recently to support these kind of initiatives by giving the lot of fund support under the Atmanirbhar scheme, and as well as Kisan Rail also is one example recently started, that an exclusive trains are moving across the country to take the farm produce to the big markets in the country. And this can be used, you can come out with very innovative ideas and then do it in this. So digital marketing, this is another important on rise. After COVID, everybody realized that how important digital marketing is all about, because you can't meet people in person no more. So digital marketing is evident. It's very important for everybody, and at the same time, more important for the rural people like farmer producer organization, farmers, everybody, because they actually locate in remote locations. So how they will be able to showcase their good agriculture practices, good commodities, and then the value proposition they are actually giving to the consumers, how they will be able to reach out to the global markets also. So this is what we need to. Digital marketing can erase the limitations across the globe, across the borders. So if you are able to project your product well, even somebody sitting in US, somebody sitting in Japan, somebody sitting in Korea, anybody can see this, and then they may ask, okay, I want to know more details, or after that I want to import it, or I want to do something for you, like that. So this is going to have a economic benefit. So these are then the branding. In fact, branding brings more visibility. This is very important. So a lot of opportunities are there. Output marketing, of course, this is one of the area everybody does that. We so far we are into only production and sales, so we are suffering in that. So output marketing can be more professional. Now digital markets have come in place, like Enam has come in place, and already NCDX, MCX, and then commodity exchanges were there, and also now the Bombay Stock Exchange also is entering into this commodity transactions. So output marketing also can be done more professional, more transparently, and as a mainstream retail industry, integration, because the retail industry also growing very rapidly in India. So imports and exports, another important area where we really can unleash the potential of achieving the doubling the farmers' income, doubling the agriculture exports comes under this. So policy advocacy is very important thing, that so India really suffering a lot because many people do not understand policies. So we go by sometimes confused by the local people interest and how they play with the things. So it is important for us always to look at the Indian context, Indian national interests, and then we have to see that to study carefully the policies, and it's required. So much of potential is there in every state, every district level. We need to have more and more experts, who understands the policies and who guides the farmer producer organizations, who helps the farmers to produce their farming output to benefit from the policies. So that is what is important. And it's not only for the farmers, it is for the agribusiness industry as well. So otherwise, if something is banned, then tomorrow your company cannot perform anything if you don't understand the policy implications. So these are very important. At the same time, statutory compliances. When we are talking about agri business, we need to understand that business means it's all about organizing many things, and then it will have some standard operating protocols, and also a set of governing rules and regulations internally, and also by the state where they are operating, state level legislations, so they have to comply, and then at the same time central legislations like income tax, GST, and even regarding the pesticides, fertilizers, seeds. There are various bodies, who have control over it. So if you are claiming that you are into the organic farming, then you also need to have compliance of organic certification. So these kind of things everybody should be aware. And India doesn't have too much of professionals available in this. You can check it on the ground. Then very few people you can found it. So a country of this size, 1.3 billion population, still having very limited people is a shame of us. So we need to seriously look at. We have to understand the opportunities. So that is what is happening from the Western side and the European countries. The youth does. They understand. They do market research, and then they choose the careers which have the scope to grow. So look into these things. So statutory compliances is one of the fast growing, and then it has evergreen. I can say that because wherever and every year people need to meet the compliances. And food processing, we have huge opportunities as it is already growing, and then it's a big thing. Without food, nobody can survive. So a lot of innovations can be brought in this, and we have so much of diversity of food products in India: fruits, vegetables, millets, everything. So even organic produce. So you can come up with some new recipes, and then new molecule, so the combinations, and then you can actually produce a new product, so which can also have a global demand. So these are the brands which we need to create. So a lot of opportunity is there in that. So in our spices, for example, so R&D, yeah, this is another important area where India has very limited budget allocation. So as of now, we are very low when we compare with global standards. So I feel this is one of the area where you can also pursue it, and then sensitized by your good work, where the budget allocations also can increase over a period of time. So friends, I talk now about entrepreneurship. So some of you or most of you also wondering that we don't want to do a job. So you might even have something that in your mind that, okay, I want to start on my something on my own. So you want to become an entrepreneur. So how are you actually going to understand the overall dynamics of the entrepreneurship and then the ecosystem required for it? So I'll just go by a general definition here. What is entrepreneurship means is, it's simple language. It's about engine of global economic development and a force for positive change in society. So you all need to keep in mind that if you are becoming an entrepreneur, you are actually going to be part of the big engine, which is going to give a strength to the global economic development. So you are actually going to contribute for the economic development globally, not just locally. So locally is going to contribute the state level is going to contribute national level, and national level is going to contribute globally. So we need to look at that always the global perspective from the local context. So you need to keep another important thing is that a force for positive change in society. It is not just about only money, but it is also important that for us to bring the positive change in the society. So it needs to have a good implications on the society. So you need to understand about the sustainable development goals, UN SDGs, which are 17 goals prescribed. So 1 to 17, you need to get familiar with them and find out which are interesting to you, and then which are the areas you wanted to work, you can work on them. So a working definition is that, as mentioned by Professor Howard Stevenson of Harvard University, entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity beyond resources control. So its pursuit means relentless focus on the solution. So you have a problem, you identified a problem, and you also know that what is the solution, but the solution cannot be coming just like that. So you need to have a lot of focus on that. A lot of hurdles will come, challenges will come. Then you may say that, okay, it's not working and I'm not for this. So you should not give it up. If you really mean for that, then you have to have a relentless focus. You have to pursue that to get that particular thing done. So what are the opportunities you have for the entrepreneurship is that pioneering a truly innovative product. So this is what something you can do. Devising a new business model. So even an existing product and everything, you can come out with a new business model. So for example, as we mentioned that in the franchise model for eFresh agribusiness solutions, so the farmer development centers. Otherwise, typically everybody have their own centers. So we are trying a new model, something a new business model, and creating a better or cost effective version of an existing product. So existing product also you can make a better version, and cost effectiveness is most important thing, where the customers can come forward, consumers can like it, and you can increase your customer base. So all big companies only will make money on the economies of scale only. It's not just because every customer is going to pay too much of money for them. No, it's not possible. They get very limited, very mean margins, but their transactions are very big, so that they make a lot of revenues. That is what you need to understand. And targeting an existing product to a new customer segment. So reaching to a new customer segment also is one of the entrepreneur object opportunity. So beyond resources control, managing resource constraints. So founders must mobilize more resources than they control personally. The venture eventually requires production facilities, distribution channels, working capital, etc. So if you are going to become an entrepreneur, you need to have these things. You need to have working capital. You need to have good connections to have a distribution of your product, and also before you go to the distributions, you need to have a production facility. So do you have all those things at the time you start, or you need to mobilize it? So if you look at that, the entrepreneurs are pursuing a novel opportunity while lacking access to required resources. Entrepreneurs face considerable risks in four different ways. See what happens usually. Everybody will not have everything in their dispose. So we are all not. India is still a middle income country, and it is still developing country. We are not blessed with enough or abundant resources at everybody's hand. It's only a few people are blessed in that way. So everybody can have something is an idea. So there is no problem in that. Rich, poor, anybody can have a good idea. So once you have that idea, which has the potential to bring a new product or new service to the country, these are the four things will come into you to sustain that. One is demand risk. So prospective customers' willingness to adapt the solution envisioned by the entrepreneur. So we have the prospective customers' acceptance. That is one, that is called demand risk. Another one is technology risk. It is high when engineering or scientific breakthroughs are required to bring a solution to successful execution. Say, for example, you are talking about digitization. Then if you don't have the proper technology, if it is not bug free, then you may that actually can give you a wrong interpretation. So if you give data, but the output of the data is not coming well, then you are at big risk. Or if you don't have the technology, even say for example the nutrition application, and then field diagnosis, when we are talking about drones and other things, sensors and all, you need to have that. If you don't have that, then you cannot really do it at a large scale. So the technology risk is very, very important. You need to consider about your product specific. And execution risk. It relates to entrepreneurs' ability to attract employees and partners who can implement the ventures plan. So this is a very important. Even though you are able to manage the technology and demand risks, but if you don't have the right people, quality people, as an employees or partners, then your entrepreneurship can be, enterprise can be at risk, big risk. So financing risk is another important thing, of course, related to whether an external capital will be available on reasonable terms. Some people go, okay, I just need money, I just need to provide and prove myself that to the world, so I can borrow at very high interest rates, but they will break you. That is not sensible. You should get the money. If you are disciplined, you can wait some time. You only need to accept the things completely in a proper manner. So you need to have to access to the financials also at reasonable terms only. So otherwise people will exploit you. So that should not be given by any entrepreneurs. That. So the entrepreneur's task is to manage this uncertainty of the capital availability at reasonable rates. So we talk about those most important four risks. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you need to consider about demand risk, technology risk, execution risk, and financing risk. So entrepreneurs often face a kind of a dilemma that is called as a catch-22 issue. So a dilemma or difficult circumstance from which there is no escape because of mutually conflicting or dependent conditions. So this is called as a catch-22 situation. So it is possible for everybody gets into that. Every entrepreneur who is starting something, they will get, because they like and they love their idea very much. They firmly believe that this has the potential to change what they problem they are trying to address it, but they don't understand some other things. That is the reason they got into that. What happens after some time, they feel that, okay, if I leave this now, then my reputation will go wrong, or how I will be looked at among my peers and all. So these are the questions they come in. So how usually this can be addressed? So we have given four how successful entrepreneurs really manage these catch 22 situation is mentioned here. One is lean experimentation. It allows them to resolve risks quickly and with limited resource expenditure by relying on a minimum viable product. You don't need to do at a scale just because you believe a product is good. So first you need to go with a very lean experimentation model. You have to test, you have to do the pilot, action research with a selective appropriate target customer base of the product. So once you get that positive feedback, then you can go to rigorously test a business model hypothesis to next level. So staged investing, this is about the investments. Some people believe that too much, and then this is going to change the world, this is going to change the entire country, I'm going to give good. But if you don't understand the proper things, then your money, or the people who are believing in you and they're putting their money, is at risk. So staged investing is more important. You don't need to put the total big investments in the beginning itself. So you need to have an approach to address risks sequentially, expending only on the resources required to meet a given milestone before committing the resources needed to achieve the next milestone. So you have to have a plan, to granular plan, which describes very clearly from beginning to 1 year plan, 3 year plan, 5 year plan, 10 year plan, like that. So you need to have those kind of breakups, and then you have to spend your money accordingly on that to achieve the milestones. And partnering allows entrepreneurs to leverage another organization's resources and thereby shifts risks to parties better able or more willing to bear them. In a variation of this tactic, entrepreneurs rent resources to keep costs variable and to avoid the big fixed outlays associated with resource ownership. So partnerships makes a lot of difference. In fact, that UN SDGs, to achieve all the UN goals of that sustainable development goals 1 to 16, you need to have the 17th goal. It talks about partnerships. So you can look at that, who are the right people who are willing to share risks with you, because any new idea is coming with a risk until it is accepted well and until it is proven and went on scale. So there is a risk always. So you have to see how do you manage these risks by not only alone, you also need to have people, right people who can take that risk sharing. And fourth important is storytelling. And entrepreneurs conjuring a vision of a better world that could be brought about by their venture can encourage resource owners to downplay risks and in the process commit more resources than they would if they had not been inspired. See, here they have given examples of Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Jamshedji Tata, Dhirubhai Ambani, Narayana Murthy, etc. So they all have believed something. They started from nowhere and somewhere, and then they built empires now. So big empires across the globe. So how it happened is because they are able to tell their story well. So what is that they are going to achieve? What is that they are going to provide services to the world? They explain clearly, and then the world has actually accepted. So your story need to be very crisp and clear, and what is the solution you are bringing and how it is actually bringing prosperity, that is called wealth creation for everybody. That speaks a lot. So you need to keep in mind these four important aspects if you want to go into the entrepreneurship approach. So it's all about setting a startup, building from zero. Founder need to be responsible for everything, one from idea to purpose, and there should be a purpose of doing things. Preference for independence, it is fine, but independence means that you can sleep whenever you want, or it's not like that. You need to be responsible for everything. In fact, if you are employee only, you will be answerable to your boss only. But if you are the entrepreneur, you are supposed to be everything. So you need to understand this. The freedom is good, but freedom needs to be exercised properly. And ability to manage risk and mobilize resources is very important. If you are having all those things, then you have a fair opportunity or scope to become a successful entrepreneur. So you need to be inventive, you need to be creative, you need to be opportunistic, and persuasive because they rarely have enough resources. So you all need to know that you have an idea, and from idea to you have to go to a level where you're able to mobilize resources, mobilize partnerships, and then get more people acknowledge your services, and then you grow. Where it comes, revenue generation is very key. So what in agribusiness context, what are the benefits we have, what are the advantages we have? So if you look at the policy ecosystem, government of India has already taken several initiatives which are very encouraging to the farmers. As we mentioned that doubling the farmers incomes, so they have a policy doubling the agriculture exports, dilution of APMCs and essential commodities acts, contract farming act, which allows them to work with the industries directly, and then you have control over the production and quality aspects and pricing aspects as well, and promoting 10,000 new farmer producer organizations, one district one product initiatives. 103 products have been identified from 106 districts across the country, and it will continue to identify new products as well. And agri infra fund, 1 lakh crores budget is there. ENAM, already 6,900 plus APMCs out of 1,000 markets have been integrated with the digital transactions of ENAM platform, where 18 states plus 3 UTs have been participated. And Operation Greens 500 crores project is going on. Top commodities earlier, it's tomato, onion, potato, and also vegetables now included. So so much is available on the ground, which we need to tap it properly. And Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi cash transfers is happening, and various state governments also providing these things to across the country to farmers benefit. So now the farmers don't need to depend on money lenders mostly, at least some money directly coming to their accounts as a cash. So they can actually decide to adapt the good quality inputs, either it is seed or nutrient or crop protection input or sprayer technology or machinery or anything like that, irrigation related. So you can focus that. These are the opportunities existing on the ground. And when we talk about Agri Infra Fund, it has integrated post-harvest infrastructure, 1.45 crore per project, which 35% subsidy in general areas, in the plain areas, and 50% in northeast hilly and scheduled areas. So that is another thing. And integrated pack houses up to 50 lakhs per unit is provided. Pre-cooling 25 lakhs for 6 metric ton capacity is provided. Ripening chambers per metric ton capacity 1 lakh rupee. So you can go for based on the demand and requirement of the local context. Primary processing of fruits and vegetables, aromatic plants, and cashew. For them, 25 lakh rupee per unit has been mentioned. And cold storages and controlled atmosphere storages from 5,000 to 10,000 metric ton capacity, whereas the per metric ton support is given from 6,800 rupees to 9,500 rupees per metric ton space capacity. Yeah. So the need for the India is today, we need to do smart agribusiness. We need to make our farmers smart agripreneurs. Our farmers cannot be called so far like illiterate or semi-literate, or they don't know. They cannot be called like that. So they need to be taught, and they need to be guided towards to become smart agripreneurs, whether they are small farmer or marginal farmer or medium farmer or big farmer, doesn't matter. They are Indian farmer. So we need to make in this way to get our market opportunity. As you already mentioned that ENAM and BSE, MCX, NCDX, they all provide future contract farming, contracts, so one can plan well about their commodity, and then they can also be assured about their minimum guaranteed price, not only on the MSP space, but on the marketing aspects. So smart agribusiness, food processing business, this is another important aspect, opportunity. Major industries constituting food processing industry are grains, sugar, edible oils, beverages, dairy products. The key subsegments of the food processing industry in India: dairy, fruits, vegetables, poultry, meat processing, fisheries, food retail, etc. See, look at that. India's food processing sector is one of the largest in the world, and its output expected to reach $535 billion by 2025. Huge, it is in this. The foreign direct investments in India's food processing sector are around 904 million US dollars in 2020. And the Ministry of Food Processing Industries is making all efforts to encourage investments across the value chain. The industry engages approximately 1.93 million people in around 39,748 registered units with fixed capital $32.75 billion and aggregated output around 158.69 billion US dollars. So the industry is growing. Food processing industry is growing at 7.68% growth annually. And recently, the government of India has sanctioned 134 food processing projects in different states. Out of them, 21 are agro processing clusters, 47 cold chains, 43 food processing units, 8 backward and forward linkages, 3 operation greens, and 12 food testing laboratories across various states. So please understand that this is all looks like a big numbers, but they are very small when you look at the demand. And when you look at the opportunity of the size of India's big diversity. So this is just a good beginning, and we all need to leverage these opportunities, and we have to catch up the potential what is existing. So this we already spoke about that the post-harvest losses 93 crores, and then how it is spreading across different commodities like in fruits and banana 6.7% to 15.8%, vegetables, oil seeds, and it is already there. So clearly, so you can see that the less percentage is waste is in the milk because it is organized well. Some milk chilling centers, milk cooling centers, everything has been set up across the country well. So you see the loss is less than 1%. So smart agribusiness, contract farming is another opportunity in import, production, procurement, and storage, processing, retailing, and major commodities you can see from dairy, cotton, spices, turmeric, chili, cardamom, etc. In coffee, horticulture crops, and vegetables. And you also see a lot of companies which is already engaged in contract farming in India, like Sam Miller, Jain Irrigation, Marico, Pioneer, Tata Chemicals, PepsiCo, ITC, and all, so and so. And many new companies also coming within the country and also from the global space. So National Horticulture Board provides different schemes to encourage entrepreneurs to get into the horticulture value chain aspects. You can visit the website of the Horticulture Board, NHB schemes, and understand them. Then you can also apply for those things if you are interested in that. So what is all about smart agri business? It's all about talks about quality planting material, doing agriculture or enabling agriculture to do based on the good agriculture practices, biodiversity and climate resilient farming practices to be adopted. And the inputs need to be quality, genuine, and also needed. Only farmers required, only we need to provide. We don't need to provide them what they don't need. And farm machinery, adoption, smart irrigation, risk mitigation, insurance, livestock, and agri-allied integration, because we are losing livestock from our farming up activities, which are traditionally good for that to build the soil health and all. So we also need to keep our mind on that. And post-harvest solutions, it's important to minimize the post-harvest losses at farm gate level. Processing and value addition is very important to catch the advantage of the food processing industry innovations, opportunities, and branding and financial services. This all comes under the smart and innovations we need to have. So partnerships for the prosperity, as I mentioned that UN SDGs, you all need to keep in mind. Understand these goals well, because these are going to define government policies, industry policies across the globe. Because I served on the UN Biodiversity Conference in 2018 as a panel member in Egypt from India. So I understood how important business and biodiversity, and how important every business to comply with the climate change context and all. So please understand these SDGs very completely. You should this should be our fundamental. And based on this, you whatever you want to do, you connect that which are the goals are actually being achieved from your either your entrepreneurship or your job, whatever you are going to do. Even if you are going to the government, or tomorrow if you go to civils, or if you take up something, and then you need to understand these things, because these are the guiding principles for poverty and hunger elimination across the country, and to bring the equality. So you need so these 17 goals, I hope you are able to go through them. And you all need to keep one thing is only in mind, is that innovation is the key. Innovation, passion only makes you to go forward. So here we have few classic examples like ITC, Bambino, PepsiCo, which are actually growing since so many years, and then how they are surviving. We don't use the same product what we have been using in the past 10 years back or 20 years back, but these companies are growing. How? Because they are very innovative to bring new products, new combinations to changing consumer behavior. So that is very important. So understand this. The food market size in India, as I mentioned, that 1.3 billion US dollars, and it's growing at 20% annual growth. This is very high. So these are some examples. We already spoke about innovations. Here I give one example of Pakshimitra, which is doing automation and IoT-based smart solutions for poultry farms to improve welfare and productivity. And another company is Pure Me Organics Private Limited, which is doing Jaggery-based diversified products, which is healthy life with good products. So that's their brand, what they're creating. So please remember, everything matters is quality human resources. That's the key to bring innovation. So what makes quality human resources? So as per our understanding, because SAFE Foundation, we care a lot to nurture the individuals, farmers, farmer producer organizations, youth, and then startups and everyone who are in the ecosystem of the agribusiness. We believe that the people are key. People can make, people can break. So anything can be done through the people only. So if you want to achieve something, then you need to have passion. You also need to find out your purpose, and then you have to actually practice it, what you believe in. Then automatically you will see your performance, which is actually going to create some impact. But to achieve all those things, you need to have two things: quality and consistency. So do not have any shortcuts. I am repeating this word. There is no shortcut for this. Even some people may appear that they are successful with shortcuts in short time, but it is not sustainable. And this world is becoming increasingly complex, and then more challenges are coming from different dimensions or directions, whatever you say that. For example, COVID is an example. It's completely out of the syllabus. Nobody has expected this in 2 years back, and today this has changed the world. So we don't know what else will come in the future. So we all need to be qualitative. We all need to be focused. We need to be prepared for any kind of uncertainty, and only these kind of things can help individuals or collectively. So we actually have a program called CAMPS, Career Advisor and Mentoring Programs in SAFE Foundation, where we enroll students and then we mentor them for a period of 1 year, for ensuring this quality human resource are produced to the industry and for themselves. So entrepreneur, if you want to become an entrepreneur, keep it again in the mind that passion, purpose, practice, then impact. So nothing else. So these are some of the eminent people you can recall by looking at them. I don't need to mention their names. That's the reason I did not put them. But they all have done the same thing. They have had something very passionate, and they found a purpose why they need to work. And they went on working. They went on contributing for that. So then today you see the impact they created across the globe. I'm not talking about one particular state or one particular country. They have influenced across the globe. So they are also some point of time when they started their life journey, they are also like you, like us. They are also like one graduate or postgraduate or someone who even not completed graduate. So they are all, but they are youngsters. They all have something in their mind burning that, okay, I want to do something unique, and then I want to provide a solution to the world. So they went in that way, and today they become a brand. So every startup will start from there, and then after once you prove it, once you bring to a scale to create your impact, then you are becoming a brand. So these are the basic points which I would like to mention to all of you. And with this, I will conclude my presentation. As Swaminathan ji has mentioned earlier, if agriculture fails, everything else will fail. Please keep in mind. So agriculture is not just an activity. It is about our tradition, our culture, and our food security. It's all about our living well-being. So it defines how we are producing the farming, and then how we are doing agribusiness will define our lifestyle and our country's future. So keep it in mind. Now I am open for any questions if you have it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I would like to thank Mr. Medu for enriching our knowledge on advances in agripreneurship and skill development, and also how to start up our business, how to start up our smart agri business. And he also introduced us from so many companies which are related to this. And also he discussed about innovation ideas, innovative keys and all. And also he has told us about some eminent peoples which have started from very beginning, and they are grown up now, and they are the best example for everyone how to start up your new growth and how to start up the new things in your life. So I would like to thank you again, sir. Now, everyone, the session is open for your queries. If you want to discuss something and if you have any queries in your mind, you can ask.
You can also email me if you have anything that in later also. I will be happy to provide.
Definitely, sir. Definitely. We have your mail ID also.
Yes, please. Yeah. So we have. I think
You can also share your mail ID with all the participants over here.
Sonal has mentioned one question: why in India we especially our mother negotiate with the vegetable vendors, but we don't negotiate in alcohol, tobacco, etc. It's all about mindset, Sonal. So the people who care, they negotiate. The people who don't care, they don't negotiate.
Definitely, sir. Definitely.
Yeah. And yeah, there is a difference between those two things also. That people you know, the segment actually that, you know, so the people who go for tobacco and alcohol, they feel like it's something a luxury for them. So
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, there is a query. There is just a discussion from my side that is there any direct relationship between entrepreneurship and economic development?
absolutely,
It's a direct relationship.
absolutely, because every entrepreneurship is actually is going to contribute for the economic development of the local and then the global as well. So that's what we need to understand. So, but many people don't believe that. They actually think that it is a survival for themselves.
Yes,
So
sir.
the perspective has to be changed. And you know, you are not going to start an entrepreneurship to survive yourself. Actually, you are giving solutions to the society.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
That perspective will change a lot. How do you think yourself? How do you position yourself? And all? So it's as long as we see that okay, it is only my survival, then there is no difference between a beggar and us. So it's a maybe
Sir,
a example. Yeah.
thank you so much. Thank you. So there is a query from one of our students, Miss Sonal. She was asking that, sir, why in India we especially our mother negotiate with the vegetable vendors?
I just answered that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just answered that. So now you have you clarified that? Yeah. Okay. You mentioned that one more question. Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
This is why farming is considered or less valued as compared to any other field. How we as a computer science student can contribute over this. Okay. See, farming actually doesn't require any technical qualification and all those things. It only helps you to understand the overall dynamics properly. So education brings a kind of a knowledge perspective development. Okay, you should be able to identify what is good, what is not good. So if you are a computer professional, then you have a skill or some kind of a knowledge where you talk about systems and all. But agriculture is very complex. You cannot define that, okay, today I have programmed it, tomorrow you need to sow, means you have to sow, because tomorrow it depends on if there is a rainfall, excess rainfall, cyclone comes, or you know, otherwise after you sown with a good rainfall, good irrigation, then you don't have a rain or irrigation facilities for next couple of weeks, then the crop will die. So there are so many different parameters makes agriculture very complex. So it requires complete attention to the farm activities, and then the sense of, you know, need based application. The success comes to the people who can anticipate in advance. So the prevention is better than cure. That is what is actually told for, you know. So if you are able to practice that, then people will learn and then actually get success out of it. So the farmers are good in that, but the problem is that they are resource poor. They are not knowledge poor. They are actually resource poor. They know that the input what they are using is not sufficient enough, but there is no alternatives for them. So what they do? They know that the pesticide they are applying is not sufficient enough, but that is the only thing what they can get best. They don't get the other thing. So what they do? So that is where we need to do that. We have to come out with the solutions that where the agri value chain approach. You need to understand a particular commodity and what are the inputs required to ensure that entire value chain performs better, and make sure that they are available. Make sure that the stakeholders who are actually providing those inputs, services, technology, they also take part of that. So that is what bridging the inefficiencies and making it efficient.
So there is one more query, like, sir, what should be the correct approach to educate our farmers to use modern technologies in enhance their production?
So this is where we are talking about now. Farmer producer organizations is one of the local solution, because they are the members first. All the producers are members of their own institution. So the members' interest will come first. So why a group of farmers come and then they form an institution of them, their own. What they talk, they cannot talk something exploit each other, right? So they only talk something which is going to help them. So FPOs are very important to begin with, but at the same time, FPOs need to partner with institutions who are very professional and transparent, and then they have a commitment to provide these kind of multi-dimensional services to them, because it's mentoring is important. Mentoring is very, very important. So this is where it makes the difference. So many people they fail in identifying the right mentors, and then they have bitter experiences, and then they give up. They don't trust. So because we need to be conscious and cautious to identify the right people who are good and credible. Whenever I talk about partnerships, I mean it's about credible partnerships. I don't mean just a partnership because somebody is providing something, they have something that. So it's not that. You need to have a credible partnership. So it's important. If you don't care about that, then there is no need for others to care about you. So how do you establish your credibility? So when you don't partner with the credible people. So this is the point. So we all need to start from there, and then my suggestion is that it should start from the FPOs, and FPOs should engage with the local responsible departments, because they have, whether you like it or you don't like it, they have the responsibility. Okay, so the agriculture department or horticulture department are all, so they have a responsibility. They are the part of this nation's administration system, and we need to talk to them. We need to pursue them. So sometimes they may be reluctant. They may say that no, I don't have time, or they may say that this idea won't work out. So they can talk anything from their understanding, but it is not individual. It is about collective. So we need to build good experiences. Say for example, recently I tell you, there is one FPO from Tripura, Northeast. They have exported jackfruit to London. Even our Prime Minister also mentioned that in his recent Mann Ki Baat, sometime about this example of the farmers sending the jackfruit to London. So that is the classic example. So when a remote farmer sitting in the Northeast state in Tripura are able to send their produce to London, Dubai, Germany, they get more money. The people who are sitting in London, they can pay more money, right? If the same jackfruit is sold in the same Tripura, how much they can pay? And if you compare that what they got from the London market, it is much higher. That is what is going to help to achieve the doubling the farmer income, doubling the agriculture exports. This is what we need to have it. So if you want to do that, then you need to understand what markets wants. Then so you can't sell something to the London that okay, this is what I have and you take it. No, see what London citizens want, then you need to understand, and according to meet their requirement you send, then they will accept it, and then they will put repeat order, right? So that's how the business and trading grows, and we learn each other and we understand. Then you come out with new idea, and then you will tell them, okay my friends, I come with a new product, and you taste it, and then you come out. This is how the things will move on. So okay.
Okay, sir. So Dr. Shilpa, she wants your guidance for the important things that need to be taken into the consideration why we are going to plan for the small scale startups for agribusiness.
Why?
Sir, Dr. Shilpa is there. She just wants your guidance for the important things that need to be taken into consideration while we are going to plan for the small scale startup for agribusiness.
Fine. Yeah. So you see, we can stick into the same points what we discussed there in the presentation. Its most important thing is that you always need to see that you are actually identified an opportunity which is going to provide solutions to the community or customers, a segment of customers. You need to identify that first. So after that, you have to do a small pilot. So you need to have right mentors, and then that's why now a lot of incubation units are coming across the universities, and then even institutions like ICRISAT or IIIT or NAM or XYZ, they also have manage and all. But my point is that you need to be passionate, you need to have clarity about what you are doing, and then there should be a demand, and you need to have the right people. And first you need to test this idea before you go to commercialization with right mentors guidance, with a limited a number of stakeholder engagement. So once it is proven, then you can go for the scale up.
Okay, sir. Sir, she also wants to know about the government, is there any government subsidies for the startup of this?
Yes, they are providing under the Startup India initiative, but I cannot say is a subsidy. It is based on the merit of the idea. They are actually, there is a committee. Once anyone is providing their idea, what is that they are going to provide as a startup thing. So the committee evaluates that, and then if the committee feels that it has a potential to start their commercial activity over a period of time, then they will recommend some seed fund grant. Some grant will be provided. Yes.
Okay, sir. So Dr. Ranjana is there. She's just want to start a business related to agriculture implement tools. That what will be the steps for the successful business? How to start up that?
So do you have that solution? That's okay. You are going to start agriculture implements, fine. But what implement for which crop? So what stage your idea is there? It depends on that. So if you already worked out a prototype of your product, and then if you already tried this, then you can actually work it out to scale it up this into a wider or diversified experimentation, validation of this product in a different context, or wherever you believe that this is providing solutions to them, a potato farmer or a groundnut farmer or a cotton farmer or a paddy farmer. So depends on which segment. So yes, there is a big opportunity for the farm implements and farm machinery, but you need to define that what is your product, and where is the stage, which stage it is in now, who are your target clients, and according to that you need to choose some partners to experiment that. Yes.
There is query from student that to be an entrepreneur, we need to be financially stable. Like before starting a business, and the student while graduation is unable to do, so then what if he and she fails at first?
Financially, not necessarily. That's where we talk about that, it is your ability to identify people who can come forward and then provide that kind of support. You don't need to be financially well. So, but you have an idea, but having an idea is not sufficient enough, because you need to give that confidence to the investors, whoever is going to come and join hands with you by putting their money, that you are actually going to execute that. So your main challenge is not having an idea. Your main challenging is that how do you give your credibility that you can execute that idea to scalable and then profitable. So that's it. So I already explained about that. So now you need to get into an ecosystem where you really get these kind of networks and then contacts with many people, and then you have to learn from those interactions and experiences.
Okay, sir. Dr. Shilpa is again wants a guidance for like she's asking that please recommend us if there is any startup for the organic products.
So they want to know about the organic product
Yes,
startup.
sir. Yes,
Sure,
sir.
we will connect that. Yeah. There are Terra Green, one is organic startup which is already taking shape. We will connect few of them. Yeah.
So one student is want to ask like, sir, can you please elaborate more about the digital marketing and what the challenges we face during digital marketing, and how we can aware people regarding this type of marketing?
Digital marketing, yes, see, as I mentioned, that it has immense potential to reach out to the segment across the globe. Even but you need to be defined first to whom you want to reach. See, many people will be posting something on Facebook, Insta, or LinkedIn, or WhatsApp. So they have different groups for that purpose, but they are not very clear who are their group, their target clients. So you should be developing your content creation as per the requirement first. That is one thing. And then you also need to have positioning those right content to right groups. That is the important aspect. And digital marketing can be a e-poster, or it can be a small video, say 30 seconds video, or even 1 minute video. It needs to be short and crisp, and in a language where people can understand to whom you wanted to communicate. Whether it is meant for the farmers, then the farmer language it has to. If it means for the policymakers, then you need to have a different kind of things. So it's all about that. So if I if I would like to mention now immediately, what you can do is that say now farmer producer organizations. FPOs, they produce so much different products on the ground, but many people don't know about these things across the markets. They don't even know, because markets procure the commodities through middlemen largely. So they don't know. So from where it is actually is coming in, they largely knows that okay, this is coming from that part, this part, but from exactly from where, nobody knows. So here digital marketing can make sure that this particular FPO is producing this basmati rice, or this turmeric variety particular, or this onion variety, or this particular chili, or something like that. So you can actually create awareness among the buyers. So if not immediately, after some time somebody will understand, and then they will come forward and say that I want this part, this much of quantity, let us go for a contract farming, an agreement. So that is how you can empower that. It's all about making yourself aware to the external world. That's important. Yeah. So quality of the content should be very crisp, and it should be target specific.
So one student is asking that how much new Kisan bill is helpful for agribusiness?
New Kisan bills.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So new Kisan bills is, as I mentioned that one is contract farming aspect. Yes, the farmers definitely can get benefit because individually they cannot get benefit. First, we need to understand that any of the three bills, if the farmers want to get benefit individually, they will not be helpful. It will be only benefit to the farmers when they are organized into the farmer producer organizations, and because they will have the negotiation capacity, bargaining capacity. So it is for them to choose either to sell it or not. So it is for them to sell their produce. As I said right now, Tripura farmers have already sent to London. So how? Why they didn't send in Agartala, or why they couldn't send in Kolkata, nearby big city, or at the maximum they couldn't come to Delhi. So they also send it to Delhi. Their pineapple is coming to Delhi markets. So that's the point. So you can leverage these things to reach to the external farm markets where money is there, and then you can get benefit. I feel if it is organized in a way collectively by the farmer producer organizations, they are very useful. Yes. You are on. You have to unmute. Yeah.
Sorry, sir. So Dr. Shilpa is asking again about the tips to convince the investors if we have an innovative ideas for the startup.
See, tips, it's a very tricky word for me, but what I feel is that you need to be yourself, and you need to be very clear about your plan. You need to have that presentation of your idea and how it goes to the next couple of years presentation. You need to be clear on your roadmap, and you also need to know what are your shortfalls, and what you lack it, and what technology you require, what financial resources you require, what human resources you require, what collaborations you require to get into new markets like distribution network and all, or manufacturing facilities. You need to be very clear before you go and ask to any investor. So investors looks at all these things clarity. So who are your market, what is your product, and what are your actual requirement, where they should put their money, and how it is going to come back, because investors are not giving money free. They want return on investment. So you need to be very clear on those things. I think once, if anybody is having clarity on those things, they will be able to successful to convince the investors. So it's all about credibility of your idea and your ability to articulate your solution as an entrepreneur, how you are going to bring the change.
Okay, sir. Sir, Dr. Ranjana is want to ask about which type of agribusiness will be more profitable for an BSc agriculture student.
See, BSc agriculture means you largely look at that agronomical things and all those things, right? It's basic information what we are looking at. So today's context, you can talk about a pesticide residue-free farming, food processing. Also, you can enter into that. You know, just because you are BSc agriculture, nobody can tell that you can't do anything in the food processing. Or you can also look at the management aspects also. So I say it's open. Whatever I mentioned there, or any agricultural graduate can start getting benefited from that. But they need to be passionate. They need to have a purpose why they are getting into that. So it can be contract farming, or it can be farmer producer organizations management, or it can be food processing units, or it can be smart irrigation, or farm mechanization, or seed. Anything they can pursue their careers, but they should be passionate about what they are doing. So that's very important. Yeah.
Is there
But
any?
no,
Okay.
yeah, but going into the next qualification, say for example, if they want to pursue MBA, or if they want to go specialization in food processing, it will help them much more to gain knowledge in depth.
Sir, is there any scheme for startup of mushroom cultivation?
Mushroom, I am not very sure about the scheme, especially for mushroom, but they can approach to food processing related aspects in the Department of Horticulture or food processing units in the state specific. They can approach and then they can get some insights on that. So, but they don't cost much. What I feel for the mushroom kind of thing, it won't cost much. It's not. It doesn't require much of investment. You can look at the NIRD website about the mushrooms related things. They have something, and you will get more details about that. Yes, National Institute of Rural Development (NIRD) website.
NRD.
Yeah.
Sir, Dr. Rishu wants to ask that what can be the source for any financial help in agribusiness startup?
So here we still need to evolve that one-stop solution. We don't have. We are trying to gather these information from here and there, but in general, what is happening? NABARD is there, which is actually talks about financial assistance because they are linked with many schemes and then policy-related things and then funding them. And if you also approach some banks which are aggressively doing agriculture finance, so they will also explain you what products they have towards agri financing. But if anything you want to relate it to the schemes, you want to know that you must visit NABARD website and also the Ministry of Food Processing Industries. So they also provide the schemes what are available and then what is the component. And the best people could be the local district officials like agriculture department, horticulture department, sericulture or irrigation. So if anything they have, they will tell you. So dairy, animal husbandry, these are the people to be contacted. So because they have a mandate to take these things to implementation. So please look at these two aspects. And also institutions like us, we are always there. If you have a specific thing, then we will do our research from our network and we will guide it. So that's where SAVE Foundation is actually guiding students when they are in college, and even they passed out also, we are enrolling them for camps programs. And also those who wanted to start some entrepreneurship or they started something also, we have a startup incubation services. So we mentor them for 1 year. So to be focused on specific opportunity. So I think this could be very useful.
So one student is asking about that like there are 90% of small farmers in India, but insurance companies will focus on a particular land area. So how we can ensure so many small farmers in India that they can go for a startup when they are lacking behind of this insurance?
Correct. So see, even now, if you look at that, there is an organization called Gram Cover. It's a startup in insurance field. So they have reached a very good number of farmers across the country. Even WRMS, Weather Research Management Services, they also reached out to small and marginal farmers across the country. But it's impossible for anybody to reach individually, as I mentioned again. So their approach is to reach them through the farmer producer organizations. So that is the reason why everybody is talking about FPOs. That is the same reason. So because it will reduce the transactional cost, and the members can plan within the farmer producer organization, and they can put a collective demand. So operational cost, operating cost will be reduced. It is going to be a win-win situation.
So is there any scheme for vertical farming, terrace farming systems?
No, I don't think so. Vertical farming, I don't think so. Yeah.
Okay, sir. So
Very
these are
expensive
the,
actually. Vertical farming is a very expensive thing, and we also need
is
to
a very
be,
expensive. Yes, sir.
and second thing we need to keep something in our mind is that it is soilless farming.
So I
So
just-
yeah, so something who believe that organic farming is actually is produced from a healthy soil, then you actually don't have anything in the vertical farming to claim that. So vertical farming only helpful for to produce abundantly in less space for selective crops like leafy vegetables or something like that. So some vegetables kind of thing. It has some limitations as per my understanding, and even FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, also doesn't acknowledge that it is qualifies as a organic farming or something. They didn't say. They said we don't know. So we have a solution in the form of vertical farming, but it is very expensive one side, and the second thing is that it is soilless farming. And the soil, if somebody believes that Mother Earth is the everything is feeding to us, then you can understand what I'm saying. So okay, it doesn't have
Yes.
anything to feed from that. Yeah.
So there are, Dr. Vishu is asking again that there are subsidies in agriculture,
Hmm.
but only for the production specific practices. But is there any scheme for a new agri-business startup?
Yes, agri-business startup. That's what I'm saying. Startup India welcomes that. So if you have an idea, you please provide, because now money is coming from different things. See, if your idea is to set up a processing plant, if your idea is to set up a logistic unit or something like that, there is a fund available now. Agri infrastructure fund is available there, so you can use that. So your startup can qualify into that level. So you need to study that what are the qualifying requirements for that, and you have to achieve that to obtain them.
One query from my side, like we are going to export the things internationally related to fruits. So in which type of commodities it is it is beneficial, like the fresh fruit exporting or the like processed product?
See, Indian fruits are largely known for the fresh fruit consumption. If you look at mango or banana or grapes, they are actually demanded from even pomegranate and also fresh fruit. So it's important for us that to keep the freshness and the aroma and then the taste of that, the nutrition value of those things are ensured to the markets where we are going to deliver. In fact, now we have very good transportation systems in place, and then say, now the sea lanes, for example, one day shipping also is possible to Middle East from West Coast, from either from Mumbai or Vadodara, or some or Bandra market, Port Bandar, from there also Gujarat. So this is where it has its own importance for that the fresh fruits. What I'm saying that. So processed fruits, yes, always will be there, but the good market, if you can leverage, is fresh fruits, but risk free is that processed fruits.
Processed.
So yeah,
I said like jackfruit is exported to London, so it's a fresh fruit or it's a processed product?
they are sent fresh fruit. Right?
Fresh fruits. So one student is asking like ethanol is the future fuel for our automobiles. So sir, how much ethanol boost income for our farmers?
See, I definitely agree with this point. Ethanol is the future. The issue is not just having ethanol, but you also need to have a good technology to produce it, and then the good output has to come from the ethanol. So that is why it is important. In fact, recently I had a discussion with a Swedish counterpart who are going to partner with us, and they were mentioning about the same thing, that the technology they are going to introduce us, who are having very good hands-on expertise. But look at the earlier also, like biofuels. A couple of years back, 10 years back, or more than that, India talked about Jatropha and Pongamia, their oils using into the biofuels and all. So, but we largely could not succeed in that. So we need to be very scientifically, practically feasible when we come out with the solutions. That is important, and it has to be proven. So yes, ethanol is required, and there is a potential from the agri waste a lot, and the kind of technology we are going to use depends on its success. So we need to see that. So who is going to bring that technology, and then how it is going to be used for that. Definitely, it will help a lot for the farmers because they can sell their farm waste and all those things, and then they can get money on that. But one more new thing is that even carbon sequestration also is going to help farmers to get some money. I'm sure that it is going to be introduced in India very soon on commercial basis.
So one student is saying again about this vertical farming. He was asking that mushroom farming is done in vertical farming. So is there no any chances to get any subsidy if we are going to do that on a large scale?
Mushroom thing, yeah, we will provide that information. You can reach out your requirement and what is that large scale means and how much you want to produce, and throw some light on your idea. Who are your markets, and how much money you want to make, how much you want to produce, and all those things. Shoot an email to us. We'll get back on this.
So like students are asking again that in India, if a farmer grows some things by hydroponics, so is it be cost effective and that farmer will get enough profit in India market environment?
I don't think for hydroponics is not cost effective. It's expensive, and it's very sensitive. And you, even if you set up a hydroponic unit today with a lot of money you have from your surplus or your savings, or a loan or something, tomorrow with some small sensitive thing, even if you don't change the water and if the water quality is not good, and it is doomed off. And now farmer is happy. At least he depends on the rain, and then if rain comes, okay. If rain doesn't come, also okay. So this is very risky. I don't think small and marginal farmers are not going to be any point of time is going to adapt hydroponics. It's not possible for them, and no farmer will be interested in this because they love working with the soil.
Okay, sir.
This
Sir,
is only for the people who don't have soil access.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, Dr. Shilpa is asking that is there any startup for residue management, as it is a big challenge for the farmers, especially in case of paddy crops?
Yeah, residue management.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so it's all about the adoption of the good agriculture practices. That's why we are also insisting on that. So the crop, whatever the crop they produce, it should be on the fundamentals of the good agriculture practices. Our farmers largely are not practicing that because they are guided by the input dealers. So the input dealers have a business interest to sell the inputs whatever they have, and we already learned that 58% of the inputs available are either fake or not required to the farmers. So ultimately, they end up with these kind of challenges and the residues of the chemicals which are not required, unwanted chemical residues. So it is important for the farmer producer organizations or individuals or the institutions who want to buy the produce from them to create awareness among the farmers about the good agriculture practices, and also only recommended inputs are used in that.
Okay, so one student is asking that, sir, USA has banned some Asian foods, and are there any certification or organization who is going to be help the farmers to export their commodities, their foods, and their products to USA, which is free and fruit fly?
Yeah. See, any country, not only US, even Europe also, they have their own standards. They don't want to buy anything unhealthy for their citizens. They are very conscious about their citizens' welfare. Why is they're allowing something to come in? Because it has to serve the need of their population, right? So they are very conscious about their health. So they have their own standards like US GAP, United States Good Agriculture Practices, EU GAP, European Union Good Agriculture Practices, and then there are some specific certifications which they need to comply, like in US USDA, Department of Agriculture has to approve these kind of certificates what we provide to them. So we need to understand those things, and if we comply with that, there will not be any issue. So we all need to learn about those requirements. Say tomorrow you decide that I want to send a particular commodity to US, then you need to first study that what is the policy of the US government to import those particular commodity. Then you have to go back to your production systems, and then the certification process, packaging, and everything matters. Until this produce reach to the port of the country where you are exporting, everything what you do matters. It can be even rejected even at the port of entry also. You get all the licenses here. Okay, you are certified by your local agriculture department, and then your laboratory here, and then they give a certificate that it's a residue free and everything, but it still can be rejected in the port because it is not compliant something else. So there is an ecosystem of compliances which we need to be clear about. Your packaging, your transportation vehicles, what you used, or even the people who are engaged in the activities. If somewhere you knowingly or unknowingly used the child labor, then it can be rejected. Right. So we need to be aware of all those things. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So again, there is one query that is there any suggestions for small scale startup which is the best under Punjab conditions?
Which one?
So, is there any suggestions for small scale startup that will be best under Punjab conditions?
Punjab conditions. See, you have to look at your own crops, local crops. Then second thing is that value addition is more important. What I feel is that you have to look at innovations in the value addition. So changing the current way of marketing, you have to look into the food processing, and value addition is more important. And also going organic is also another opportunity. What I believe that because Punjab is earlier known for extensive exploitation by the green revolution effect. So it is a challenging task, but it's a great opportunity for the Punjab farming community, that to move towards organic, where they can really leverage their superiority back. So while complying with the climate resilient farming and biodiversity conservation and all, because Punjab lost so much in the direction when they went aggressively in green revolution benefits.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So, like one student is asking that why success in conventional banana breeding is climate dependent? Is
Why
it due to why success in conventional banana breeding is climate dependent? Is
I'm
it
not.
due to set in banana? Is it due to seed set in banana?
I don't know. I don't know about this. Perhaps maybe a specialist in this domain can answer this. But what I understood from my knowledge is that the tissue culture banana is coming of more
Yes, sir.
important now. That is where the companies like Jain Irrigation or even Reliance Biosciences, and they're actually investing money. So maybe you should look at their reports, and then what they claim that why it is superior than the traditional banana things. Yeah?
Yes, and in the present era only that is successful in case of banana. Micro propagation is successful.
Mm.
So this is all about queries now. So every student and faculty members would like to thank you for your responses on their queries. So I also like to thank to you for this informative session and imparting your knowledge on this entrepreneurship and agribusiness. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure. Really glad to see a lot of diversity of the questions and engagement. I hope students will take positively this, and then they get benefit. I wish all of them, very best. Good luck. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So you can leave the session now. Students, this is the information to all of you. Before leaving this session, please fill the feedback form. Students, please fill the feedback form. If you're facing any problem for filling that, then please tell us.
Dear participants, if you are facing any problem, you can just let us know and make sure that before leaving the session, you have to fill your feedback form. Thank you all.